Hello everybody, my name is Eric Wood, and today we are going to be taking a quick look at the Justice League.
Everybody knows that the boat is leaking.
Okay, so Justice League was okay. There were a lot of problems with it. The special effects were mediocre at best. The story was predictable as all heck. However, there was a lot of good parts. The actors all gave it their best. The characters were extremely interesting. Watching these characters interact with each other was a lot of fun, which you could argue is the point of the movie. And so what the Justice League ultimately is a movie with a lot of very bad parts and a movie with a lot of very good parts. But instead of going through and nitpicking the movie for all its flaws or highlighting all the individual cool stuff, I am going to focus on what I consider this movie's primary and major shortcoming to be, and kind of extrapolate from there. In order to have a good movie, you need a good villain. Justice League has one of the most boring, uninteresting, uninspired villains I have seen for a long, long time. He's not visually interesting to look at, he doesn't have an interesting story, and he's not an interesting character. The villain's name is Steppenwolf, but let's face it, the villain doesn't need a name. He's a force of nature. He's generically evil. He is completely and utterly boring in every conceivable way. He has horns like the devil, and he wants to turn Earth into a generic lava planet. So this is very important to me, and is kind of one of the crux of my storytelling philosophy. Okay, so when dealing with building a good villain, you have to ask yourself three basic questions. Question number one, what does your villain want and why does he or she want it?
Silly goose, it's all a joke. Everything anybody's ever valued or struggled for, it's monstrous. Why can't you see the funny side? Why aren't you laughing?
Number two, what does your villain say about the hero? How is your hero better accented by the contrast of the villain?
Because I've heard it before. And it wasn't funny the first time.
And number three, what is good about your villain? What is redeemable about your villain?
You don't need to be alone. We don't have to kill each other. Let me help you.
I'm sorry, but no. No. It's far too late for that.
And the thing that's frustrating is that DC is supposed to be good at this. They have all the cool villains. They have Lex Luthor. They have the Joker. They have Darkseid. They have, like, one of the classic villains in fiction belong to DC. This should not be a difficult concept. So what does the Justice League villain want? He wants to destroy the world. Why? Because he's evil or something. What does your villain say about your heroes? Well, I guess Steppenwolf is bad, and therefore the people we're rooting for are good. Freaking boring, man. And finally, what is good about your villain? Well, there's nothing good about Steppenwolf. He's just the personification of evil. He just wants to hurt, destroy, and cause pain. A villain is only terrifying when that villain talks good sense. It's often said that the Joker from the Batman comics is most terrifying when he just sits there and talks. This doesn't make the Joker a good guy, but it makes him interesting. He makes him complex, and it develops Batman's character further. Steppenwolf, the villain from the Justice League, may as well just be replaced by a hurricane or an earthquake. He's not a character. He's a non-character. He is boring, and he doesn't do anything to further develop the character of the heroes who's conflicting with him. I actually watched Justice League twice over this break, once on my own time to make this video, and once with my family. And I'm actually very grateful that I watched it twice, because the first time I watched it, I was just frustrated, but I couldn't really figure out why I was frustrated. I was just generally grr-ish about the whole idea of this movie. But the second time I watched it, it all began to make sense. I actually quite liked this movie. For the first 10, 20 minutes of the movie, I was fully invested. I really enjoyed it. There was a general feeling of despair. The villain seemed to be no one thing, but rather the societal despair that crashed down upon people after Superman was killed. It seemed like, in the early parts of the movie, the villain was fear itself, which is so much better than this CGI abomination. Ultimately, this is a movie that has good moments. It suffers from an inability to really focus. It dabbles in all these interesting ideas. The superhero Cyborg feels like he's not really human. This is addressed, but then never really resolved. Superman and Batman have another big fight where Superman is about to kill Batman, saying Batman is useless to him. That is an interesting conflict, but then it's never brought up again. So I guess that's my conclusion. If Justice League taught me anything, it's that DC has a lot to figure out before it can get to the point where Marvel is. It's trying to do too much too quickly. I want to take my time living in this world. I want to learn about Aquaman. I want to learn about this version of Batman. I want to learn about The Flash. But in a movie where they're all clumped together and they are forced to be in opposition to a character that's just... I'm just gonna hammer on this. This is just a boring villain. And so when you have a boring villain, not a lot of focus on your main characters, and a plot that is super easy to predict, you don't really have much of a movie. You just kind of have a series of events, some of which are vaguely interesting, some of which aren't. And so, if you're interested in these characters, go watch it. You get to see your characters having fun, kind of clashing against each other, and it's fun. It's a good popcorn movie. But if you're looking for the big climactic thing that's going to propel DC back into its rightful place as the king of comic book movies, that's still a long way off. Seriously, Steppenwolf is just a boring villain. I mean, the hacker from cyberspace had more character development than Steppenwolf.